What if the faces we admire today, the artists, the visionaries, the rebels, aren't just talented? What if they've been here before, in different bodies, in different eras, with different names, but the same soul? Tonight, we're stepping into one of the most mysterious corners of the human experience, past life regression, a journey through hypnosis, visions, and inexplicable memory. You'll hear stories from icons like Shirley MacLaine, Barbra Streisand, Morrison, the Dalai Lama, Carl Jung, and more. Not rumours, their own accounts of places they've never been, languages they've never learned, and lives they may have already lived. So get ready to question everything, because this isn't just about who they were. It might make you wonder who you've been. And if this kind of mystery speaks to your soul, go ahead and like the video and hit subscribe. We've got a lot more journeys like this waiting just beyond the veil. Shirley MacLaine isn't just an Oscar-winning actress. She's also a seeker of spiritual truth. In the 1980s, she shocked the world with her memoir, Out on a Limb, in which she openly spoke about past lives, Atlantis, and astral projection. But what truly set her on that path wasn't just dreams or curiosity. It began with a session with a trance channeler, a psychic medium who claimed to speak for otherworldly intelligences. In the session, the channeler revealed something that stunned Shirley. Her close friend David was her son in a previous life. And the man she was secretly in love with, a powerful politician, had once been her political enemy in another incarnation. This revelation hit her like lightning. There was no way the channeler could have known, but they did. And I remembered. Determined to learn more, Shirley travelled to the Andes Mountains of Peru, a land long said to be rich with ancient energies. There, at high altitude in sacred silence, Shirley had what she later described as an out-of-body experience. She felt herself floating above her body, slipping into an elevated state of consciousness. In that state, she saw vivid fragments of lives she had once lived. An Atlantean healer, a Tibetan monk, a temple priestess in a forgotten land. I didn't imagine them. I was them. From that moment on, Shirley devoted herself not only to acting, but to awakening the world to the reality of the soul's journey across time. In a private regression therapy session, the legendary Barbra Streisand closed her eyes and found herself not on a stage, but in a Roman amphitheatre. Under hypnosis, she described the scent of limestone, the warmth of the sun, the sound of sandals shuffling on stone. Then she began speaking fluent Latin, a language she'd never studied. It means, I was an actress, not now, but then, a performer for Roman nobility, and I knew it was my last show. She recalled standing in the Colosseum, forced to perform a final tragedy before being sent to her execution. Later fact-checking revealed that the terms and rituals she described matched obscure Roman theatre practices, known only to a handful of scholars. If it was just imagination, how did she know that? Barbra never fully confirmed the session publicly, but those close to her say her music changed after that. Her voice took on something older, deeper, as if she wasn't just singing from the heart, but from centuries of memory. Morrison, the iconic frontman of The Doors, often described himself as a man possessed, but not metaphorically. At the age of 4, while driving through the New Mexico desert with his family, Jim witnessed a tragic car accident involving Native American workers. As they passed the wreckage, something happened. I saw a soul leave a man's body and enter mine. From that moment, he was never the same. He became obsessed with tribal rituals, spirit guides, and shamanic trance. He said that an ancient spirit, a Native American shaman, had taken residence inside him. There's a shaman living in me, trying to remember. During one studio session, Jim collapsed. When he came to, he whispered, "I just crossed the desert. Not this desert, the one before time." His music, his poetry, even his stage performances transformed into spiritual ceremonies. While critics called it madness, his fans knew Jim wasn't performing, he was channeling. In Tibetan Buddhism, reincarnation isn't a belief, it's a system. When the 13th Dalai Lama passed away, senior monks searched for signs pointing to his rebirth. One night, a vision in a sacred lake led them to a remote village called Taxer. There, a 2-year-old boy recognized the monks and called them by their previous names. They tested him by presenting a tray of objects, some of which had belonged to the late Dalai Lama. Without hesitation, the child picked out every correct item. "This is mine," he said, "and this, and this." That boy would grow up to become the 14th Dalai Lama, a spiritual leader with detailed memories, teachings, and visions that aligned with his predecessor. Death is not the end. It is the doorway to the next room. Whether you believe it or not, something undeniably ancient moves through him and reminds us that the soul does not forget. Menes Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, didn't claim to recall past lives, but he walked through them. In recurring dreams and meditative trances, he saw himself as a medieval doctor, a tribal elder, even a sage philosopher in an ancient temple. Rather than calling them hallucinations, Jung coined a new term, the collective unconscious, a reservoir of symbols, memories, and archetypes shared by all of humanity. His Red Book, written in isolation, is filled with mystical images and visionary entries, resembling the revelations of a monk more than a scientist. To Jung, the line between imagination and past life memory was thin. We are not just individuals, we are echoes of all that has come before. Leonardo da Vinci dreamed of flying machines centuries before planes existed. Some believe he may have carried memories of a future life back into the past, or perhaps had already lived in a civilization far more advanced than we know. His dreams were filled with fire, machines, and motion, symbols from lifetimes not yet written. Maybe that's why his work still feels timeless. Throughout her stormy life, Tina Turner wasn't just a global music icon. She was a spiritual seeker. After years of abuse, depression, and emotional turmoil, Tina began a deep inner journey that led her to Buddhist chanting, meditation, and eventually past life regression therapy. During a session with a spiritual therapist in Switzerland, Tina entered a profound trance-like state. What she saw was both haunting and revealing. I was in an ancient temple. I wore a white robe, a silk veil over my head, and carried a bronze water vessel. I didn't speak, I only served, in silence, and I felt an aching loneliness. In that vision, Tina was a temple priestess, possibly in ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia. A woman bound by ritual and duty, never allowed to express her true self. She lived in spiritual confinement, silenced by centuries of sacred rules. What startled her the most was the emotion. She cried during the session, not from fear, but from recognition. She realized that this life, the one where she finally broke free from an abusive relationship, wasn't just about escaping a man. It was about breaking a karmic cycle. I understood that I wasn't just leaving a marriage. I was freeing myself from 1,000 years of silence, of not being allowed to speak, to love, or to live as I am. After this regression, Tina said her music transformed. She called it liberated, luminous, and soul-driven. Her later songs like I'm Better Than That and Beyond became, in her own words, spiritual anthems of soul freedom. We know Sylvester Stallone as the relentless fighter, Rocky Balboa, Rambo, the ultimate symbol of grit and survival. But behind the Hollywood tough guy persona lies a far more mystical story, one that Stallone himself has hinted at in interviews. I have this strange memory of being stabbed in the back, not in a metaphorical way, I mean literally, with a sword, right in the neck. That haunting feeling didn't come from a film script. It came during a past life regression session. In that deeply altered state, Stallone found himself standing inside the stone walls of ancient Rome. He wasn't a gladiator. He wasn't a general. He was a rebel, a captured warrior sentenced to death for defying the empire. He saw vivid fragments, himself being dragged into a dusty arena at dawn, forced to kneel, surrounded by silent soldiers. And then, the cold, sharp sensation of a blade piercing the back of his neck.
I felt it. I felt everything. The dust, the tension, the betrayal, and then nothing, just silence.
He later shared that ever since childhood, he had an unexplained hypersensitivity in the nape of his neck. Doctors found nothing, but he always flinched when anyone touched that area. After the regression, he understood why. I don't know how to explain it with logic, but I've lived that moment before I ever lived this one. What's more, Stallone said that this past life vision helped him channel the emotional rage and sense of injustice into his most iconic roles: Rocky's defiance, Rambo's trauma, the refusal to kneel. All of it, he believes, echoes from a soul once sentenced and now fighting back. Barbro Karlén was not just a child prodigy. She was a Swedish poet, publishing her first collection of poems at the age of 13, earning national recognition for her emotional depth and literary brilliance. But behind the poetic lines lay a secret, one that had haunted her since she first learned to speak.
My name isn't Barbro. My name is Anne.
From a very young age, Barbro began telling her parents that she wasn't who they thought she was. She insisted that her real name was Anne Frank, the Jewish girl whose diary became one of the most famous and heartbreaking testimonies of the Holocaust. Barbro had vivid, inexplicable fears, a deep terror of men in uniforms, an inability to take showers, nightmares of being hunted, and memories of a life in Amsterdam, though she had never been there. Then came the moment that changed everything. When she was 10 years old, Barbro and her parents travelled to the Netherlands. Without a map or directions, Barbro led them through the streets of Amsterdam and stopped in front of a house. It was the Anne Frank house. And inside that house, Barbro described rooms and details that were not included in the public tour, including the wallpaper and specific photos Anne had pinned to the wall. At one point she asked, "Why did they change the curtains?" Even a tour guide confirmed the curtains had indeed been changed after the war. Barbro's memories could not be explained by books or imagination. She remembered emotions, betrayal, silence, and arrest. Later in life, she published her memoir, And the Wolves Howled, where she wrote, "I didn't want to be Anne Frank. I just remembered being her." As an adult, Barbro came to see her experience not as a curse, but as a message, a warning about hatred, and a reminder that the soul never forgets. So, what do we make of all this? Memories of temples and theatres. deserts and dreams. Names forgotten by history, yet recalled under hypnosis or in visions. Is it all imagination or something deeper? Past life regression therapy is still controversial, but the stories keep coming, and the people who live them keep remembering. What about you? Have you ever met someone and felt like you already knew them, dreamed of a place you've never been? Maybe you were there. If this video stirred something in you, a curiosity, a memory, a feeling, let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss more journeys into the unseen, because sometimes the past isn't behind us. It's still unfolding. Remember,